Alright, I'll make this short and sweet. I got my headphones in here with the microphone plugged in so I can make sure my audio goes through. And I want to start off by giving a little bit of background on Monsanto. Monsanto is a huge agrochemical company that's responsible for things like Agent Orange and DDT, but what they're really getting a lot of flack for and a lot of attention for now is their role they're playing in GMO foods. They're creating a lot of GMO crops. So GMO stands for genetically modified organism, where they take the DNA from another species, could be in a different domain, kingdom, phylum, class, and put it into the DNA of another species that would not exist in nature. DNA only goes linear in nature, but with Monsanto's techniques, they're able to cross domains even. So that's what creates GMO crops. And so according to Monsanto's website, they have 6 GMO crops that are in wide circulation in the American food supply right now. They've monkeyed with a lot more, but as of right now, in widespread circulation, there are 6. And those 6 are alfalfa, corn, cotton, canola, sugar beets, and soy. So those are the 6. And of those 6, there are 2 main varieties of those plants. And those are, 1, roundup-tolerant, or Roundup-ready, as they've called them, patented Roundup-ready seeds, or the BT variety. Some of them have both. Let's go about Roundup. Well, what is Roundup? Roundup is a Monsanto herbicide, very powerful herbicide. It doesn't just kill other plants, but it kills, animals, kills bacteria. Almost nothing could survive in this stuff. But what they did find was they found a bacteria that somehow is able to survive in a bunch of Roundup. So, hooray, they took the DNA from that bacteria, Roundup-resistant bacteria, put it into the DNA of those 6 plant varieties, and now they have Roundup-ready seeds where you could plant the whole field with these seeds and spray the whole field with Roundup. All your weeds die, everything else dies, but your crop survives. So that's the Roundup-ready variety. The second variety is the BT variety. And BT stands for Bacillus thuringiensis. It's the type of bacteria that secretes a toxic pesticide where if insects eat it, it destroys their insides and they die. Well, they took the DNA from that bacteria, the genetic material, boom, put it into those plants that I just mentioned, those 6. And now they have a BT variety of those, which is a plant that produces its own pesticide. A bug comes, eats the corn, dies, kills it. So that's pretty crazy, right? Well, there are a few questions come up when people know kind of how that has happened. And one is it natural? No, it's not natural. They could cross domains. Another one is it safe? Well, we did not know that. The most alarming thing about GMO research is the lack of GMO research. And when GMOs first came out, Monsanto put a patent on it. Patent expires after a while, so that gave Monsanto a huge incentive to get it to the marketplace as soon as possible, make as big of a profit on it as soon as possible. But they had a little bit of a hiccup, is that we have federal regulating agencies, and I'll talk more about how they possibly got over those obstacles in a minute. But they basically were able to rush the food to the food supply after only a 90-day test. So 90-day test doesn't test generations of adverse side effects over these things. And now that it's 2015, a lot more studies are coming out with these GMO crops and the corresponding use of the Roundup glyphosate-based herbicide. So, one study to see if it was safe put some Roundup-ready corn, fed it to populations of rats at 11 or 22% of their overall calories from genetically modified corn or non-genetically modified regular corn. Now they fed them genetically modified corn that was doused in Roundup, regular ones, and they even did some groups with a little bit of Roundup, 0.01 parts per billion, or 0.1 parts per billion in their drinking water. And what they found was the populations of rats that were eating the genetically modified corn developed kidney and liver toxicity that led to kidney and liver failure, which led to the rats' premature death. And in female rats, they developed mammary tumors, which is the equivalent of breast cancer in people, all kinds of problems. The rats were 2 to 3 more times likely to die when they were just fed the corn the genetically modified corn by itself, and when it was soaked in Roundup, like they soak the corn in Roundup in real life, they were 6 times more likely to die a premature death. So there's that. Another one is a direct correlation between the rising of instances in some chronic diseases and the increased use of glyphosate-based herbicides and GMO foods, crops being grown, and directly correlates, kind of flatline, and then boom, they both just start spiking in the mid-90s when GMO crops and the heavy uses of glyphosate herbicides came out. And those diseases that are correlated with that are celiac disease, renal failure, which is kidney failure, death, kidney hospitalizations, gastrointestinal hospitalizations, Parkinson's disease, and thyroid cancer. So that's no good. Another thing is they found trace microRNA in the blood supply of mammals who have eaten GMO corn or GMO crops with that RNA. Now those were intended for invertebrates, but now they're causing adverse gene expression in humans as well. Another study showed that honey, 59% of honey in the supermarkets and 36% of soy sauce products have glyphosate residues in them. And with the honey, that's indicative of the honey bees being contaminated to agricultural poisons. Another thing is a study done on the Roundup herbicide itself. Monsanto says, hey, Roundup, the active ingredient is glyphosate, the other 9 ingredients are inert. Well, this study took those 9 ingredients and found 8 of those 9 ingredients are up to 1,000 times more toxic to human cells than the glyphosate itself. And then one more study showed that glyphosate bonds with the micronutrients in the soil, rendering them unabsorbable, which renders the plant deficient, which renders us deficient of these vital nutrients. So are GMOs safe? The research is now showing that GMOs are not safe. But how is it still in the food supply? How is it still in circulation? Well, if you're Monsanto, you have a lot of money, you have a lot of agenda, and your agenda is to make as much money, maximize as much profit as possible. You're going to want to stack the deck in your favor. And what better way to stack the deck in your favor than to have some of your high-level executives and some people holding power positions in your company, Monsanto, to transfer over and start maintaining positions in some of these federal regulating agencies like the FDA, the EPA, the USDA, the Supreme Court, the Senate. Yeah, that'd be nice, right? Well, that's exactly what Monsanto has done. So as far as the FDA goes, many commissioners of the FDA have been former Monsanto employees. Barack Obama, currently in his last term, appointed Michael Taylor, former vice president and lobbyist for Monsanto, to be the head of commissioner for food for the FDA. Also, an FDA reviewer of scientific data, also used to work with Monsanto in their bovine growth hormone project. So FDA, boom, put it there, put it right there. Now the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, well, let's put some people in there, huh? So they have Deputy Administrator for the Environmental Protection Agency, used to hold a high-level position in Monsanto as well. And so that's kind of convenient, huh, for Monsanto. The USDA, they like to put those labels on them saying, hey, this is organic, this is not organic, whatever. In order for something to be organic, it has to have no chemical fertilizers, herbicides, pesticides, fungicides for the last 7 years on that soil at all. But since all this cross-contamination is going on with GMO crops and regular crops of that same variety, now organic farmers are allowed to have a certain percentage of GMO DNA, GMO crops in their crop. Because cross-contamination, that's just terrible for the environment, and it's making GMOs are contaminating the rest of our food supply. In 1991, Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas was appointed into office, and he used to be a former Monsanto lawyer. But that's not all where it goes. That's not the end of it. former Senator and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton used to be a lawyer for Monsanto. Michael Cantor used to be a lawyer for Monsanto, and he held positions under the Clinton-Gore administration for Secretary of Commerce and Trade. He was a trade representative. Also, Donald Rumsfeld, Secretary of Defense under the second Bush administration and the Ford administration, used to be the CEO of Seralini, and that company was an agro-pharmaceutical company, merged with Monsanto in 1985. So, with the president appointing Monsanto vice presidents to be the head of the FDA, and the Monsanto infiltrating literally every branch of government, including the Supreme Court, and the EPA, the FDA. And the FDA is supposed to be in charge of keeping the nation's food supply safe. And the USDA, the question is do you trust that?